Treyarch is finally winning back the zombies community with their recent tweet where they addressed some of the things that people were concerned about in zombies over the past few weeks, in particular with some of the changes they made a week ago in regards to different speedrun exploits and some nerfs that they did to certain things like Shadow Rift. They've basically reverted a lot of those changes. We're going to talk about that in this video, but they're also making some other changes and some of them are actually really huge. The first one I want to talk about here is the fact that they are working on a way for the HUD settings to be separated between multiplayer and zombies. So for those of you who don't know, currently in Black Ops 6 Zombies, if you change your HUD, it will also change your HUD for multiplayer. Of course, they added all this HUD customization in, which is obviously a good change for them to include, but if it's going to change your HUD for the entire game rather than just the one singular mode, it becomes quite frustrating having to switch your HUD every single time you switch between each game mode, because a lot of players, including myself, like to have different HUDs for each mode. Treyarch responded directly to me about this and they said it is in the works. They did not give a specific date for when this is coming, so it could be season 2, it could be season 3, who knows, but let's hope it's going to be sooner rather than later, because personally this is one of my bigger issues with Black Ops 6 at the moment. They are also adding a way to track challenges, so that would obviously include camo challenges, and the purpose for this would be so you can view the challenges in the menus while you're in the game itself, so you don't have to keep backing out to the main menu in order to see your challenges. This was a feature in Modern Warfare 3 for most of its life cycle, so I'm not sure why it's taken so long to get added into Black Ops 6. I thought the whole point of Call of Duty HQ was so they can just carry over stuff from the prior games to the new games. It's really unfortunate that Call of Duty basically has to start over from scratch every single year, and so a lot of these quality of life changes take a lot of time to get added. But at least they're adding it at some point. That is definitely better than nothing. They've also decided that they are going to extend the round cap for the new Deadlight Greenlight mode to round 20 instead of round 10 like it currently is now. Now, personally, I don't think this really fixes the mode whatsoever. Like, I don't think this is going to suddenly make it a good mode. It still is pretty rough because there really shouldn't be a round cap at all, at least for this type of mode. Now, this is not to say that they should never have game modes that have round caps, because I think there's definitely a time and place to put round caps in. For example, Gauntlet mode from BO4, they had a round cap of round 30, but it made perfect sense because that mode was a genuine challenge that made it pretty difficult to get to the end of that cap. Whereas with Deadlight Greenlight, I don't really think it's going to be like that hard to get to the end of round 20, and if there isn't any like interesting reward, I don't even know if people are going to care to get to that point either. The mode is just kind of repetitive. Like, even to round 10, I don't think it's going to change getting to round 20. You also still can't do the Easter eggs in the mode. You can't even do any side Easter eggs either. I just don't see the point. Personally, it's not going to fix it, but it is better than nothing for sure. Now, in regards to Treyarch reverting some of the changes that they made last week, I wanted to kind of talk about a few of them here, just because it just shows me that Treyarch is listening to our complaints, and that is definitely a good thing. One of the main ones was that they made it harder to camo grind in directed mode by basically extending the time between rounds and basically delaying the amount of zombies that are going to spawn in after a certain amount of rounds looped within the round cap in a directed mode. So this is a change that I wasn't really that affected by, because I'm not really one to camo grind all that much. I don't really care too much to camo grind, at least not as much as other people do. I know a lot of people like to go as fast as possible with the camo grinding, and so I understand why Treyarch maybe doesn't want people to camo grind in this mode, because they want this mode to be used specifically for players to do the Easter egg. They don't want people to be sitting in this mode just continuing on and on and on. So I kind of understood why they decided to make that change, but I think the underlying issue here is, honestly, I think the camo grind just isn't fun enough. That is my personal opinion. I feel like if people are going to be so frustrated at the fact that they change certain things that make the camo grind a little bit longer, that tells me that there's something wrong with the grind itself. It's not as fun as people think it is, and they probably should change it at least a little bit. But I'm glad, at least in this case, they just went ahead and said, okay, we're going to let players do that again, because that is the only way they're going to enjoy this camo grind. So screw it, let's just let them have it. And I appreciate that. I think that's good, because there is enough people who are complaining about it, and that shows that they are listening. Another change they made last week was that they actually completely nerfed the Shadow Rift ammo mod and basically made it not nearly as good as it was before by making it so it can't one-shot elites anymore. And now they didn't revert that change, but they did buff Shadow Rift in a lot of different ways, like increasing the activation rate quite a bit for normal, special, and elite enemies, and also decrease the cooldown timers. So this is a great change. I don't see any issue with them buffing some of the ammo mods to make them better. I'm totally fine with that. And in regards to when they nerf things, I see a lot of people online saying stuff like they should never nerf things in a PvE mode, and I actually kind of disagree with that. I think it doesn't really make sense to say that, at least as a blanket statement. I understand the idea behind it, but there are certainly instances where nerfing something would make a lot of sense. For example, let's say they accidentally had a wonder weapon that like killed every zombie on the map instantly and had infinite ammo. I don't know why that would happen on an accident, but let's say that like accidentally happened, where a wonder weapon was just the most insanely powerful thing ever, that it made it impossible for you to ever die. Why would they not nerf that? Like that, you know what I mean? So I understand when people say they should never nerf anything. I don't think they actually mean that, but I think it's important to be clear about what you're saying because it sets a bad precedent. I don't want Treyarch to think that if they ever add anything way too powerful that they shouldn't do anything about it, because I definitely think you do need to balance things properly so the game is actually challenging. If everything's too overpowered, suddenly the game is just piss easy. But in general, I do think it's good to have items in the game be very OP. They just have to kind of make up for it by making the enemies really powerful as well. I think Black Ops 2 Origins is one of the best examples of that. Like without the overpowered stuff, it is a very difficult game, very difficult map. You're going to be struggling, but once you get the stabs, you're chilling. Like it's going to be a lot easier, but there's still a lot of powerful enemies like the Panzer that will take you out pretty easily if you're, not paying attention enough. So they balance it out quite nicely on a map like that. I just think they need to kind of make the enemies a bit more difficult, especially in the early rounds. So when you eventually get those powerful items like the ammo mods and the wonder weapons and everything like that, they end up being a lot more powerful and it kind of ends up being a bit easier with those weapons. But then, again, make a bunch of boss zombies spawn in so they're a bit more powerful and make it a little bit harder. You got to balance these out properly. I don't think the answer is just never nerf anything. So I definitely think people need to be careful when they say that. The last thing they talked about was one of the speedrun skips on Terminus that involved using a shock charge to skip the workshop lockdown step of the Easter egg. And this is something that I didn't really know that much about. I'm not really too invested in the speedrun side of Black Ops 6 Zombies, but this is one of those things where I kind of get why speedrunners were upset about it, because if they don't patch this for like months and then out of nowhere 2 months after the map came out they say, okay, we're going to patch it now, it's going to make a lot of the prior speedruns they already did on that map kind of pointless, because that exploit they used on the map is not available anymore, so it wouldn't be allowed in the like Zombies World Record rules. Like, I really hope Treyarch understands, I don't think the issue has anything to do with players wanting to skip that step all of the time. I don't think people have a problem with that workshop lockdown. It's not a bad step. There's nothing wrong with the step. It's more so the fact that the glitch has already been in there for so long, you might as well just leave it. It's like if they went back to like Black Ops 3 like a year later. I know this is 2 months, it's different than a year, but still, and like patched a lot of the different quote skips on like Garad Crovey and stuff like that. It would kind of just ruin a lot of the speedruns that people already worked so hard for. So even though I'm not a speedrunner myself, I can totally understand why people were pissed about it, and I get why they probably should revert it. Now, there are definitely things in the future where I hope they can avoid as many skips as possible, because I think it's better and more interesting when speedruns don't have a bunch of different exploits that allow you to skip things. I would prefer that you were actually doing the actual Easter egg itself. But again, the map's been out for over 2 months now, so like going back to fix it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's not a thing that was like ruining the experience for anyone. No one was having a worse game because you can skip an Easter egg step with a very specific tactic. You know what I mean? And I think a bigger part of the frustration also came from the fact that Treyarch was focusing their time on fixing this as opposed to fixing other bugs and glitches that are actually more important and are actually affecting the game, with this obviously just not affecting the game at all. But thankfully Treyarch has come out and said they are going to revert it. Not right now, I think it's going to be coming in season 2, but still, that is great, and it's nice to hear them actually listening. And I've been saying for ages, they do listen. They do. This is proof of that. So people acting like they never do is just not true. And this is also why I applaud constructive criticism as much as possible. I just made a video yesterday talking about how many big issues I have with Call of Duty Zombies. I have huge problems with it right now. Black Ops 6, I'm worried for the DLC. I really, really am. And yet people were telling me in the comments, stop complaining, stop criticizing. It's pointless. It doesn't help the game. But like, clearly it does. If enough people have a certain problem with the game, they're gonna change it. They're gonna fix it. They care about doing that for the community. They do, clearly. So I definitely applaud all of you to speak up about things. If we all had a problem with the point system and spoke up about it, they probably would change the point system for the next game. But I don't think everyone really cares as much about it as some people do. I personally think it's like the biggest issue with the game right now. Not everyone's going to feel that way, and that's completely fine. But I think when everyone comes together on an issue that kind of affects pretty much everyone, or at least everyone has a negative viewpoint on it, they will change it. That's just how it is. Unless it's something like skill-based matchmaking or microtransactions, where Treyarch doesn't really have much control over that. That's more so Activision's doing. So overall, things are are definitely looking much brighter than they were before, but obviously these aren't like massive changes. They're not changing the gameplay loop. They're not changing the point system. Like stuff like that is not changing, and I don't really expect it to be honest, but these are definitely things that are a step in the right direction, and I'm certainly happy about it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I will see you on my next one. Peace out.